Hey guys, my name is Angel. Uh, I am in a psychology class with everybody. Sorry, it's going to be a little touch and go just because talking on camera is a little harder than you might think. However, my category of drug is going to be depressants. Um, I rather chose this video rather than actually doing a slide presentation because I can explain a lot more in a lot less time than actually doing a actual presentation, and then you guys might seem that presentations are presentations. Uh, However, our professor did point out a few good websites to use. However, I opted in doing something completely different and out of the box. So with that being said, when we talk about depressants, we start thinking about depressants and we look at different type of depressants such as alcohol. You have a lot of different ones such as codeine, heroin, tranquilizers. Those are just a few that I'm going to touch on. With alcohol, somebody that actually has gone through depression, being a military vet myself, having done a lot, seen a lot, you tend to deal with a lot of depression issues. And with the depression issue comes, trying to cope and how to cope with it. With anxiety, insomnia, not being able to sleep due to the nightmares that are reoccurring, which is one of the things I kind of deal with myself. I deal with a lot of nightmares, reoccurring stuff that I've done in Afghanistan, and sometimes, in law enforcement ethics as well, since I was in military police at 31 Bravo, having to respond to some of those scenes where criminal activity has taken place, that stuff kind of stays with you. So as somebody who's, deals with depression and, dealt with depressants on crime scenes. When it comes to one of the biggest ones, alcohol, people tend to use alcohol to try to avoid issues that they're trying to avoid. With that being said, alcohol can lead to people driving while intoxicated, which leads to a DUI, which can ultimately lead to death if you end up in a car accident. I've had multiple friends that were in a depressed state and they were drinking heavily and decided to drive and ended up ultimately killing themselves. Um, I'm going to say this as a way of understanding. They didn't kill anybody else. They did hurt themselves only in a single vehicle accident. With that being said, other ones you might encounter are heroin, oxycodines. Oxycodines are the ones that we all know we get from the hospital after surgery, an extensive surgery at that. And people tend to try to overuse these, and when overused, you can either overdose and or put yourself in a state where you have organ failure, which can cause you death ultimately, which is the worst thing of that type of drug. With that being said, heroin, we all know what heroin is. For those of you guys that don't know heroin is one of those type of drugs that you pretty much seen in the movies as when they cook it on a spoon, they inject it, it goes straight into your streamline, and it gives you a high sensation. Not necessarily a good thing because, again, using needles to inject into your blood veins, it tends to kind of do a lot more damage than you might think. And with that one can lead to death a lot faster. With that one, you have to be careful because it's highly addicted substance. We've all seen the homeless. We've all seen what it does. It's one of those things where it's not necessarily a good aspect. While conducting law enforcement patrols in Fort Bliss, Texas, we used to encounter heroin all the time, and it was black tar heroin. We used to encounter soldiers mixing, as they call the triple C's, the cough, cold, and congestion medicines with, Sprite just to get a drunk alcohol feeling or a high feeling. Encountered a lot of people overusing oxycodone, getting it from friends that had surgery. From when you get your wisdom teeth pulled, they give you oxycodone. They try to sell it to friends. It's another one that's a highly addictive substance. When we talk about tranquilizers, that's one of those ones that people don't think about, like, oh, tranquilizers. Where are you going to get tranquilizers? There's a lot of vets. There's a lot of vets that do assign them to, of course, ranchers that are tranquilizing their horses for purposes of either trying to heal them and or trying to provide some medical attention that's needed. Tranquilizers are one of those that's harder to get, but not necessarily that hard, because if you have pets, I'm not saying this is what you should do, but if you have pets and you need some type of sedation or a sedative, sorry, excuse my language, but that word that I cannot pronounce, it's one of those things that kind of puts you in a drowsy setting, which is considered a tranquilizer. Rufalin is another one. We all know that as a date rape drug. Not really ever encountered this one. I have encountered the drinks that have been spiked by Rufalin, and Rufalin's one of those that cause you to fall asleep really fast, and those are the ones that are very, very, very horrendous when people actually use them to spike other people's drinks. Something that's not okay. However, that is a type of depressant. As I'm looking through my list right here, those are the main ones that you're going to have. With alcohol, you're going to have people overdoing it, rather than if you go out sociably, take a drink here and there. It's perfectly fine. I'm not saying alcohol is bad, because I'm not going to say we all haven't drink it. However, use it at discretion. Don't use it to necessarily try to cover something up or try to make something go away, because alcohol never solves any problems. Along with, codeine, hydrocodone, heroin, tranquilizers, Rufalin, any of those are not going to be good for your body. At the end of the day, what you're going to have trouble with is having organ failures or something in your body that's not going to accept it, and ultimately you can kill yourself. And that's, the whole thing about life is living life to the fullest. Now, if you need medical attention, or you need to see your doctor because you're dealing with insomnia, or you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with some type of issue that you have going on, by all means, go see a doctor, but don't overdo it. And don't sell drugs to other people, especially people that have had recent surgeries. Don't try to sell off the codeine just to make a quick buck, because all we're doing is enabling other people to be able to use those depressants and put them in a state of not having, any ability to control anything. And one thing, it's one of those things where past family history, it's been one of those ones that I've had to see a lot and I've had to deal with a lot. Me, myself, I'm not one for any type of even medicinal or the legalized marijuana. I don't do any of that, just because it gives you a different state. Not necessarily saying marijuana is a depressant. However, it's one of those things where drugs are just not okay. Unless you're using it for a terminal illness, then of course, it's a terminal illness. You really don't have anywhere to go. But hopefully I covered most of those depressants in this somewhat short, long video. However, I think this was probably one of the best ways to go, just because I'm able to explain it from personal experience. Not only that, but having dealt with this in the military, having to deal with this now, it's one thing to be able to get knowledge out there and actually show people what I'm talking about. I mean, anybody can read a slide, but if you got this far to the video, thank you for staying tuned. And hopefully, if you have any questions, just let me know. But I feel like YouTubing the video myself was fairly a lot easier to be able to talk and describe, because I'm not really tech savvy when it comes to it. As it is, I've had trouble with this whole computer stuff. So yeah, hopefully I've explained everything. And if you guys have any questions, just feel free to post them on the board, and hopefully I nailed every single topic that we need to get done. Hopefully you guys have a good week, and enjoy.